Hi everybody, this is Janet. I just want to say that I tried to keep this as short as possible while still covering all of the required material. I really enjoyed creating and carrying out this project, and I believe it gave me a really good idea of what a capstone will look like. This project I called APA Style Student Nurses Challenges and Successes. I'm certain that most of you, as well as myself, have struggled to learn APA formatting. This semester, I had the privilege of teaching clinicals for the acute and chronic illness level 2 BSN students, and watching their struggles is what inspired my project. You are no doubt wondering how I'm going to relate this topic to the IOM's dimension of quality. I wondered that myself in the beginning. One of the IOM's goals is to create a safe system, and another one is that healthcare providers need to use evidence-based research to inform their practice. I propose that by improving the quality of our student nurses' writing, we will continue to build a safer healthcare system. Using evidence-based research to inform our practice is another one of IOM's goals, and by teaching nursing students to apply the American Psychological Association's writing standards, we are improving their ability to critically analyze and apply science to their practice. Another critical skill for nursing students to attain is the ability to communicate, both verbally and in writing. Studies show that human error is usually the root cause of many accidents, but errors are also usually the result of many different factors. Both external and internal factors can contribute to human errors. The IOM suggests that decreasing these factors from all angles is critical, and one area which should be addressed is ensuring the production of a knowledgeable and skilled workforce. And so again, I suggest that by improving our nursing students' APA skills, we will contribute to the creation of a culture of safety in healthcare. I thought it might be a challenge to try to relate my topic to the QSE and graduate competencies, but it turned out that it was not really. Developing a student's writing skills through APA encourages critical thinking and contributes to the student's ability to inform their practice with scientific research through scholarly inquiry. Having the ability to communicate proficiently and logically in both written and verbal forms is imperative for participating in interprofessional teams, which will contribute to the quality of patient care. So the consensus throughout the literature indicates that nursing programs have an obligation to ensure that nursing students are taught how to write well. I believe this project could be considered a balance measure because I evaluated the current processes along with the effectiveness of improvement strategies by measuring pre and post intervention outcomes. I chose this project after grading my students' first assignments, which is when it became apparent to me that they did not know how to write using APA format, and evidently they did not think that they were required to do it, even though it's stated in many times over in their university handbook, their BSN handbook, and their acute and chronic illness manual. Also, the professional academic community requires that sources be cited in APA format. So, my hypothesis is that after incorporating several strategies aimed at improving nursing students' APA writing skills into their already established curriculum, there will be a statistically significant decrease in the number of APA errors by the end of the study, as evidenced by a significant level uh, of less than 0.05 after using a paired sample t-test to compare the pre-intervention assignments of APA errors to the post-intervention assignments of APA errors. When I reviewed the literature, I found that there are many instructors who feel frustrated by their students' apparent lack of writing ability, and they feel that this represents an obstacle to learning. There were several articles that expressed that if writing standards are kept high and students know what the expectations are, that they will rise to that expected standard. There are several studies that indicate that it is extremely valuable to begin exposing students to APA-style writing early in the curriculum, and then to provide opportunities for them to practice frequently. Another interesting observation, and one that I noticed myself, is that students mostly seem to think of APA as just a nuisance, and they feel that it just adds more work to their already heavy workloads. When I remember back to when I was learning it, I don't remember enjoying learning it either. But that's there. As far as a benchmark to compare to, I looked for data and asked around, but it appears that there really isn't any. But then I realized that there is a benchmark. It is the already established APA criteria. Also, all of the students' handbooks and course manuals plainly lay it out for the students that plagiarism will not be tolerated. My data collection process started before my project did, and then I built my project around that. I obtained permission to conduct the survey portion of the project from the nursing director. And then all of the data I collected were authentic assignments, and then they were given to an outside source who matched the papers with the survey and assigned them a random number in order to blind the researcher, me. I collected APA errors and recorded them on a scorecard for each part of the project. You should know that the Acute and Chronic Illness Lab course has 4 instructors. I'm one of them. The class was split in half with 20 students in clinicals during the first 7 weeks and then 19 during the second 7 weeks. I called the first half of my study the pilot study. It included me as the instructor and my 5 students. Each of the 4 instructors is responsible for 5 students. The other 15 students during the first half were not included in the study. I collected a demographic data from 24 students total and 4 instructors by the end of the study. And then I combined those in the end. But on this slide, you can see some of the demographic data that I got from my first 5 students. The assignments that I collected were their pathophysiology assignments, and my initial collection was done on January the 19th. I recorded all of the APA errors that I collected on a scorecard for the pilot study. Then I collected pathophysiology assignments again from my 5 students on February the 25th. I recorded those on the same scorecard, and then in my paper it's included, those scorecards are included in my appendices. After the first samples were collected on January 19th, I met with each of my students individually to discuss what my expectations were for them regarding their scholarly writing. I compiled a 10-page document which contains APA writing tips and multiple examples, and then I distributed those to all of the 20 students. I then intensified my feedback to my 5 students on all of their assignments for the remainder of the clinical. I had my 5 students complete a demographic survey asking for their age, their marital status, how many children they had, and their education level. Most of them, of course, had their BSN in progress. The demographic survey had several Likert type scales, asking them to rate their level of comfort with APA both before and after my interventions. I asked them if the handout was helpful and how helpful it was, and do they believe that by improving their APA formatting that they actually improved their writing skills, and also do they feel that that helped them improve their organizational skills. I then included a comment section at the bottom. So I was very excited by my initial data, and I really didn't realize that I had completed the project, at least the first part of it, until I spoke with Dr. Roos and she informed me of that. But then she also said that this data proves that I do need to go ahead and do the other study. So the data from my pilot study on this slide shows statistically significant improvements in 2 of the categories of error which I had collected. The main error that I had observed initially was that most of the time there was a complete absence of in-text citations, and that is the one which showed the most significant improvement. And just for your reference, there were 25 categories of errors, and my sample was very small. This slide is just another illustration that really shows the significant difference between the pre and the post intervention data. And it shows that the 2 categories were fails to use in-text citations and also capitalizing article titles. The results of my pilot study demonstrated the need for the second half of my study, and after having conducted that study, I then had some ideas as to how to improve upon my interventions for the second half. This figure on this slide, I just added this because it shows the results of one of the Likert scales on the demographic study from the pilot study. And this figure shows that 4 out of the 5 students in the pilot study believed that they felt significantly more comfortable with their APA writing ability at the end of their clinical compared to how they felt about it in the beginning. So I called the second half of my study Phase 2. I changed my interventions to include a 50-minute PowerPoint lecture, and I called that I Love Writing APA Style. That's also included in my appendices. And I presented this during the orientation for the 19 students in the second half of the semester. I also presented all of them with the same 10-page handout that I created earlier, and then I made it available in the D2L classroom. I gave them an APA writing checklist to help them remember all of the steps involved in writing using APA. And then finally, all 4 of the instructors agreed to intensify their APA feedback for all assignments for the rest of the semester. We also made our APA writing expectations very clear during orientation. So the challenges that I encountered during this project mainly had to do with my increased workload because of collecting and recording all of those APA errors, which ate up a lot of my time. I collected them twice for the first 5 students, And then that was in the pilot study, and then twice for all 19 students in the phase 2 study. Also, unfortunately, the timing for both projects was slightly off. The pilot study was not really planned out in advance. Um, and then during the second part of my project, the first pathophysiology papers, were not due until after they saw the PowerPoint presentation and received the handout. In an attempt to mitigate this problem, we told them that we would not consider their APA formatting while grading their first 10 papers. As you can see, this could have influenced the data, as they could have gone in and improved their writing before turning in their assignments. But many of them had already written these assignments over their Christmas break. So, in order to be parsimonious, as Dr. Bethencourt used to say, the Phase 2 project was conducted very much like the pilot study, with some significant changes to the interventions, as I mentioned earlier. And of course, it included 19 students instead of just 5. I had a Phase 2 scorecard, very similar to the one that I used during the Phase 1 study. Then I also used the same demographic survey as study. So for the results of the study, I'll begin with the demographics data. Keep in mind that this includes all 29 participants, and in some cases the instructors are included in the data, because I had thought about separating the data between the 4 instructors, but then I didn't end up doing that in the end. The figures on this page illustrate that most of the study's participants were between the ages of 20 and 25, and they were mostly single. The age groups do include the instructors, and as you can see, one is between the ages of 61 and 70. That wasn't me. Also, the majority were female, which is no surprise, seeing that this study was conducted within the nursing. This slide also illustrates data from the demographic survey. An interesting statistic is that 24.1% of the participants in my study do not own an APA manual, and many of them only purchased it in 2016. From one of the Likert scales, a significant number of participants felt that the APA handout was very helpful. This slide also has figures that illustrate more of the data from the demographic survey. As you can see, a significant number of participants felt that the APA handout was very helpful, and also felt that by improving their APA skills, they also improved their organizational skills. This data parallels much of what I found in the literature on this subject. On this slide, I was trying out some different methods of displaying my data. So the statement at the top shows that there was a statistically significant increase in the participants' self-reported APA level from the beginning of the study compared to the second point of data collection after the interventions. The graph on the left illustrates a significant number of participants rated that they felt that they had improved their overall writing ability, and they rated it at a level 8, most of them. And they also felt that they did this by improving their APA writing skills. The Likert scale was 0 to 10. 0 was no improvement, 10 meant significant improvement. And this does correlate with what I found in my literature review. The study on the right is merely another graph that I created with the same data, and you can see the spike there at the level 8 rating. This is the exciting part. my phase 2 data obtained using a paired samples t-test again shows statistically significant improvements in 6 categories between the pre and the post-intervention data collection. As you can see, the error which showed the most improvement, the most significant improvement, was again the fails to put in text citations category, followed by the URLs not activated category, and then incorrect punctuation in the reference list. And this slide is a visual illustration of the data from the previous slide. This graph just really accentuates the differences between the pre and the post interventions data collections. You can see the list of the categories of APA errors there and the mean number of APA errors. So there's one more category that's worth mentioning, and that was the incorrect format of references category. This one was very close to also being statistically significant with a p-value of 0.055, and as Dr. Roos pointed out, had the sample size been larger, this category may have made the cutoff of a significance of less than 0.05. So the findings from this study indicate that the most significant AP error observed, and the one which showed the most improvement from my interventions, was the complete absence of in-text citations and citations that were written incorrectly. In other words, these students were committing plagiarism, which supposedly carries severe consequences if it's enforced. In my literature review, I found a couple of statements which I felt were really appropriate here. One was, plagiarism denigrates scholarship at multiple levels. And the attitudes towards plagiarism by researchers who serve as teachers and mentors can impact education and potentially give the impression of approval. My study demonstrates that when expectations are high, students will rise to those standards. The literature and this project shows that if students are given instruction in APA style writing and then given frequent feedback along with opportunities to practice, their APA errors will decrease, as well as potentially improving their overall writing abilities and organizational skills. I think all of this means that gaining proficiency in APA skills can potentially have a positive effect on more than just adhering to the rules of APA and not committing plagiarism. So throughout the literature, I found evidence that even seasoned academics struggle with APA style writing. Another frequent complaint is that grading APA can be challenging, and some feel that it is very subjective. I have to say that I disagree with those statements because APA is pretty much a strict set of well-established guidelines, and they just need to be followed. It makes me wonder if the same academics who claim that APA is subjective may be the very ones who are struggling with APA themselves. So for dissemination of my project, Dr. Roos suggested that I present this project at a faculty meeting, which I must say makes me feel slightly apprehensive because of the fear of possibly stepping on some toes. But based on the literature, I would suggest that strategies for improvement would be, first, articulating the importance of adhering to APA. That's a good place to start, aka faculty presentation, and then embedding this training into student orientations at all levels, but most importantly early in the curriculum. And then role modeling the APA standards is a must. Um, I found while teaching this semester, I found many incongruities between faculty expectations related to enforcing APA standards, which the literature suggests gives the impression that plagiarism is only a minor offense and need not be practiced consistently. The literature suggests that these inconsistencies must be eliminated. Enforcing adherence to APA standards is the most important strategy of all. And then, of course, a larger study should be conducted to evaluate if all of these strategies are successful on a much larger scale. So I have a couple of summaries actually. The first ones are that my study clearly demonstrates that the APA expectations are high, that if APA expectations are high, students will elevate the caliber of their writing to meet those standards. This study and many others indicate that improving APA skills has many benefits outside of merely not committing plagiarism. And the strategies I implemented for this project appear to have been significantly effective. And one more, sorry. I believe that APA style writing is not a choice, that it is an expectation. So, thank you. Thanks for watching my presentation, and I hope that you enjoyed it, and sorry it was so long.